Hello everyone. We have chosen Pat McNeilly, better known as Panman Pat, interview and information as the foundation for the Toronto Caribbean history. He's been one of the earliest, and he covered just about all aspects in the magazine, from the mode of travel to the social area to the entertainment to being around Flemington Park. And also, most importantly, he showed that West Indians and people from the Caribbean, when we came here, we were also productive citizens.
Well, my name is Pat McNeilly. Along the journey, the musical journey that has been my life, I've become known as Panman Pat. I've done so much work around the pan that they attached the pan to my name. So around 1967, so I came a year before 1966. A significant thing to note is that Canada was going to celebrate its centennial as a country. And that's not a very long time. Now, 50 years approximately before that, there must have been a plan, because they went to several parts of the world and started Canadian missionary schools. And the mission still continued today. So I was fortunate to start off in a Canadian missionary school, CUREP CM school. And then I went on to Hillview. So I had Canadian teachers and a Canadian connection. I was taught Canadian geography. I didn't know why. But it seemed that at the end of our journey, around 65, 66, Lester Pearson, the Prime Minister then of Canada, decided to formally open the doors to immigration to parts of the world that didn't enjoy free immigration before. So if you lived in Trinidad and you were in Canada in the late 50s or early 60s, it was by virtue of a scholarship, or your parents paid for you to be here. And when you completed your studies, you went back home. So Trinidadians, for the first time, and people from other parts of the Caribbean and other parts of the world would be able to come to Canada. And if you lived here 3 years and had a little productive type life, you became a Canadian citizen. So that was the trend. So I came in the earliest of earlies, maybe within a month or two of the gates being open. I had a visa to come a year before that to study. And so when we came to Toronto, I lived right where Caribana began, Devonshire Place. My brother had a place there with the university. And just behind the museum and all that. Yeah, so Bedford St. George subway, The subway only ran to Eglinton going north, and going east-west, I think Woodbine and Keele might have been the stops then. And it was 20 cents to ride the subway. It was 10 cents for a cup of coffee. Toronto was just opening up, so we thought it was a hot, jumping city, but a lot of those businesses were kind of new because they expected a crowd of people coming in. And so the big thing to do would be on a Sunday is to walk down to Sam the Record Man to look at records. The West Indian community from the late 60s when I was here until maybe the early 70s, it started growing. It started growing in 66. You'll be walking down Yonge Street and you see a black face across the street and you cross over to say, where you from? How long you come, And you where is going the weekend type of thing, and you tell them where the club is and they'll come out. And everybody is getting together one by one, the community getting and living in an apartment for the first time, renting a room and kitchen and stuff. Listen, you could get a room and kitchen on a second floor for $15 a week. Working for the government was $48 a week. Here in Canada, when I come. Mind you had to wear a jacket, a sport jacket, just to walk down Yonge Street to fit in. You had to wear a jacket, like a corduroy jacket. I had a green one with the leather patch. you know, and that was common and stuff. And in the summer to wear a jacket and stuff. And it was a nice society. We weren't in the habit of going to the pub, but that's what people did. So we joined along. You put $1 on the table and you get 10 draft beer and stuff, you know, $1.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, now I started playing music right away at the Trinidad Club. So when Sparrow and Lord Kitchener, this guy who was a lawyer, Charles Roach, he had the Trinidad Club, and you had guys like Selwyn Gomes would play, and you had Joe Brown, who later went on to the Trade Winds, and Terry Dale, who went on to the Trade Winds, and Clive Rustin, who went on to the Trade Winds, and now is in the Cayman, some of them. Yeah, Terry passed. So I started playing music right away, and I linked up with a few guys. And when you got a job as a musician back then, it was nice. You were hired for 6 nights. And it might be in town or out of town, Monday to Saturday. And sometimes in the afternoon on Saturdays, there'll be a matinee. And people come for that too. So I'm on the road playing music. And my mom had 12 kids, you know, and she always led us in a good direction, you know, and all of us became something in some way because of her influence and her involvement with our lives. So she always told me, you know, you got to have something to fall back on. So I'm out in Ontario on the road having fun. We're up in Wasaga Beach for 2 or 3 weeks. And I told the band, like, I have to cut this out and go back to Toronto and get settled. I'm here a year and a half. It's now 68, you know. In 67, there was Caravana, but we'll talk about that when it comes up. So I decided to leave the band. I'm here in Toronto on a Monday morning, and I didn't have a job. I left the band. I'm in my apartment for the first time, and I went and got a Toronto Star newspaper, and there was this big half-page ad. They were looking for police officers. Now, I always felt good about myself and my education, and I didn't feel lacking, so I put on a suit, the suit I traveled with, and my tie and stuff, went down to police headquarters, and I filled out the application, and they hired me. But they said the class is going to be like in 6 months, the class is going to be 6 months' time, but you're a good guy, we'd like to hang on to you. My dad was a police officer in Trinidad when he was young, in Tabacu. So, and I was a Boy Scout, you know, assistant troop leader and stuff, along with Mervyn Prescott. You might recognize that name. Yeah, he was the troop leader then. Yeah, so I joined the police force, but they put me out. They gave me a course for like a week or so and taught me how to write parking tickets. So for the first 4 or 5 months, I started writing parking tickets, waiting to be called. And bang, the police college called me, and I did very well. I made 93 in my overall in police, you know, and stuff. So I'm out on the beach here in 14 Division. In the middle of 14 Division, there's Honest Eds. So it's Spadina, Lansdowne, DuPont Lake. You know, next to that was 52 Division, a hot division to kind of encompass downtown, and so on. So they were the lively part, you know, where immigrants were coming and settling in and moving out, expanding and stuff. So when I go down there to see any driving in the car or whatever, I used to ride the motorbike. I'll see guys playing on a Sunday morning, mid-morning, and they would be dressed in the black, like ref. We only saw the referee dressed like that home, you know, and then we had jerseys after a while. Yeah. But they were dressed up and stuff. It was mostly foreign guys. I later got to know that they were Scottish guys or English guys and stuff. But you'd see the odd black person in the crowd after a while. And that started to grow 2 or 3 and stuff until they were playing against the, you know, it's like newspapers, black and white playing and stuff, you know, and reds all over. So, and that, I think, started off the soccer, but my eyes was not on the ball. My eyes was on a different beat, you know, and from one beat up north to this beat down on 14th Division. Club Trinidad sold the license to two Jamaican businessmen, and it was in the lane just south of Bloor Street on Young, a lane, and they had these businesses there. And you could drive east from Young Street on the lane, and you had to make a left turn and come out on Bloor. Right now, they put a big 25-story or something there. Yes. Marshall and they were involved there for a while. And then the two Jamaican guys, one was Roy Williams and Frank Wallace, and they moved to Bassel Street, just south of Bloor, south of where Contrast was. Urbana Club. And that was a big club. We had a group like the Cougars. Because you know why I remember? When it was Caravana Club, they had gone through the one by Young Street there and come down. One night, you know, I like music, you know. So I dressed up in this blue uniform with a belt across and a hat. I forget. I just knew it's club time, so I pull the car up and take a run inside. If you see men run, I go to the back where the musicians hang out, you know. No part. They see that boy man scatter. Then they realize, you know, who it was. Back then, I wasn't the only trainee. You had Cutties was an officer too. Good officer. A little after me, a couple of years after me, and then they had, I forget, Kelvin Cibalo, the drummer of the Trade Winds. He became a police officer too, and then he went to Trinidad and opened a security firm. And then I decided to move on. A lawyer asked me to come and work for him, so that kind of stopped my plans for a while. And I thought that'd be interesting. I said, doing what? You know, you're a lawyer, doing what? He said, just what I do. I need assistance. So I became his private assistant and investigator. And that took me for about 7-8 years. He was capitalizing on court training. I had court appearance. I had experience in evidence and developing evidence. And then he made me a commissioner of affidavit. So I had experience doing that as well. And I had a good college background from Trinidad. So I quickly learned how to do affidavits and stuff. You know, I could do it on the spot. So that experience took up a large portion of my life. And for me, it was either, you know, my mom said, you got to keep going. So I was going to go to law school or something else. And I chose something else. So the West Indian community, the only organized groups there were before we came, the UNIA, United Negro Immigrant Association, which was formed in England by Marcus Garvey and stuff. And the Jamaicans who came here kept that going. And then there was also the WIF Club, which came out of that UNIA. And they were situated near College and Spadina on the second floor. And the WIF Club would be the WIF, West Indian Federation Club. Started back when there was talk of a federation. So we all went there. I became a member of that and stuff. Just next to that, couple buildings up, there was the first doctor, black doctor qualified. There was nowhere for him to practice. No place will take him in. They never did it before, you know. Have a doctor go and cut people and all of that. So the Ontario government had to make a provision for him to start his own place. And he started around the WIF Club there and later moved next door into what's called Doctor's Hospital. The name of the street is after him, Dr. Augusta. Similarly, the first lawyer, the black lawyer, to get qualified, you have to go on article for a year or two with a firm, and then you became independent. There was no firm that would take him. They never did it before, so they don't know if it'll work out. So he was allowed to start his own practice. And today we have an association started by Charles Roach and they long after in his memory. It's called the Rogers Delos Davis Society and the Black Lawyers Association and so on. We were speaking out for our community. In contrast, the publisher was a Canadian-born gentleman by the name of Al Hamilton. And he was never the editor, but he was a good businessman. So Al started the contrast, as he said, in a station wagon. And those days, the paste up was, a little thing by hand, and you use wax to put things on the paper on the mask sheet, and you make a masthead and stuff. So after leaving 14 Division, I used to see contrast there. So I pull up and tell the guy, I could write and there's a lot of activities starting up in the Caribbean community with music. And I remember we had a guy in Trinidad named Brunel Jones, who used to write about the entertainment and the evening news. And I thought, I'd like to write a column for you. And he said, well, we can't hire anybody at the moment. I said, well, I didn't say hire, I said, I'd like to write a column for you. So I started off right away. I think I had 2 already written, which I gave him, and he had to choose which one he'd start off with. Mm-hmm. I called my column West Indian Bandstand. There were guys like Al Peabody. He did the local Canadian entertainment, a Jamaican gentleman. And we had a guy who was the editor, Harold Hoyt. He was Barbadian. He was here for a couple of years, and he worked for as long as he could. And then there were other editors and stuff. And then he went to Barbados and opened The Nation, the Nation newspapers, which I think is still going on. So on a contrast, we would publish once a week on Fridays. And we'd have like hair products, and we'd advertise the barbershops and the Caribbean groceries and the hair places for ladies, to do the hair. And Solomon Barbershop and Monica's and Eglinton and so on. On Fridays, when the papers came, I used to drive a Volkswagen Bug. And just out of community interest, I used to take bundles of the newspapers and personally deliver it. And other people did that too. And sometimes we delivered them all the way in Hamilton and stuff. That led to me spending about 4 years. I used to go visit Trinidad, and I'll go to the newspapers and say, how come we can't get the newspapers? You get the Guardian one week and you never see it again. Or you get the Punch, which I used to read the Punch, and so on. Or the Express. So they said, we have nobody up there. And I was an organizing guy. So I said, can I be the guy up there for you? So the guy at the bomb, Chokolongo's son, I think his son, Daniel. He would collect from the Guardian all those things, bundle it up, take it to Piaco, ship it up to me, and I'd drive around to the Caribbean places and put my Guardian, my Punch, my Express. I did that for 4 years, just out of community interest. So that when we did contrast, there's some people who did sports and would cover, but we didn't have a regular coverage of sports. So sometimes your group would give us things when you had a special, when it was the final match or the opening match, that type of thing. But it wasn't constantly coming in like you probably do now. And that's when we started forming little associations and groups. And now the soccer became independent until I lost track with them. And I heard from my brother that they were up in a field there. And that there'll be a march pass, and there'll be like 12 groups in the uniform, our kids, and stuff, and our friends and you guys. And there'll be a march pass and stuff. And a couple of times, the activities between soccer and music were mostly people who came from Trinidad and other islands. One point, Flemington was the place to go to connect with the community, like I used to go, but not to keep my eye on the ball, but to meet people, Even if we had to play somewhere, we'd come there after type of thing. Just a line, and everything happened then, like you meet people. And remember, my brother Lance lived only blocks away. So I'd see Lance there when I go, and get hooked up. Lance was the first Caribbean person, the first non-white person to drive one of those trailers along University Avenue, Bay Street, in the Caravana Parade. Because you only had white guys driving, they wouldn't give the trucks, to anybody. But Lance broke that barrier, and he used to be dancing, driving that truck down. You remember that? Came Panman Pat after the police. Since we're talking about history, I referred to my mom, who was the daughter of an Anglican priest in Guyana, and came to Trinidad as a young lady with the old lady, and she brought up her kids here. We came up, she sent us one at a time. And she came with Junior, who was about 10 years old. Oh, not 10, he had to be a little older, sorry. Chris was about 10. So then there was Jerry, right? When Jerry came, I admitted him to high school. You know, I was his guardian. Okay. I thought that was cute. I was about 20, maybe 22 or 23. You know, like, sit up when you're talking to the principal. Jerry's a lawyer today. Jerry in Ontario is the founder of the Unified Family Court in Ontario, where legal matters that has to do with the entire family is in the Unified Family Court. And he started that in Hamilton for the government, and he modeled it all over the province. Before that, Jerry, this little brother, just before Junior, he was the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal. He started that one too, the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario. Now, there was a human rights place that you could go to, I forget what it's called, human rights, whatever. But the tribunal meant if a legal issue came up, the tribunal could deal with it in its entirety. So that's still going on University Avenue. And then they sent him to Winnipeg to work on. Jerry became the first director of the province's Independent Police Review Commission. So when you have a problem and you complain to the police department in Ontario, whatever department, and you didn't feel you got justice or whatever, you have to go to the Independent Police Review Commission. Jerry started the first one, he just retired, and that started around the G20, just before G20 experience we had, and that was his first big report and stuff. So that's Jerry. So he founded the Human Rights Tribunal here in Ontario. My elder brother, Russell, who became the Dean of UWI in St. Augustine, right in our backyard almost, when he succeeded Sir Frank Warren, who had passed it was during Eric Williams' time, and Russell became the Dean. After that, I think Bo Tiwari, who was a kid who lived close by, and I guess he probably picked up a few things from Russell. Russell died as the Dean of Education of the University in Fredericton. He was the founder of the Maritime Human Rights Commission. So that's for Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland. And she went through that whole experience with Jerry. And me and Lance and everybody. She was close with all her kids, you know. I didn't tell you the Steelpan, you had asked me about that. So while I was in the 80s, I was able to become a teacher here in Ontario. I went to the Faculty of Education in Kingston, Queen's University. And later on, I did courses at York and computer and stuff. So I started and wrote curriculum for Steelpan as a credit course in Ontario high schools for grade 9, 10, and 11. You can get 3 credits. And there are almost 50 schools here in Toronto participating in that program. And there are so many PAN teachers that became PAN people who became teachers out of the experience. My greatest success as a teacher when I teach bands, one year I put together 3 school bands and we entered the Pan Alive competition that Muggs used to organize. And then my student, Al Foster, who I've been teaching from grade 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, took him as a student to Trinidad twice for Panorama. Al has won the last 8 Pan Alives here in Toronto in a row. Fantasy. I've been teaching him since he was in grade 7, Pan. I had to push him out my class. Al, you'll be late for the next class. Leave, you know. I started doing a few years ago night school, something I have a relationship with the Board of Education, so I could use any school that has plans after school. You know, I just book it and teach. So my first Pan school a few years ago in the West End, front seat, Al Foster. He didn't stay the whole time, but he couldn't resist coming, you know, and that's a great student. I'm like, you know, they're like my kids, my musical kids. Earl appeared junior. Afropan having a big concert near the museum there in one of those big halls out there. And during the concert, boy, I learned this song and I'm playing the song and there's a baby in the front row that decides to scream and bawl throughout the song. I could have played with one stick, you wouldn't know the difference. His name is Earl Lapeer Jr., ESP. I think he was arguing with me from then. He's a great, I never forget that. Yeah. I am a member over 20 years of Afropan, Since I moved downtown, I had to belong to the local band, so I joined Afropan. Because people ask me sometimes, they've been interviewed, which band you with? I say Afropan. Okay, here you never hear this, but I don't know if I could play and sing this one. I never rehearsed it. From the time we pack the pan and we head to the stadium, tonight, we go cha-da-da. I forget that part. Anyway, the chorus is, we are the people's band, Afro-pan. We are the people's band, Afro-pan. Oh, yo, la-da-da-de-doy, la-da-da-de-doy. Something like that. So sure, before the big blocko, 1 hour before it starts. So if they're going to start 5 o'clock, I have a calypso hour from 4 o'clock. Yeah, that'll be a big one. I play everything in Steelpan. I write music. I've written 2 books on the Steelpan. I kept referring to this lady, my mom. So I just saw a picture. You can see it good? Yeah. Yeah, she's been taking me around the music. She always encouraged me. This here is a copy of my musical journey. It's a book with only pictures, of things that I've done, like the preface and so on. See, when I was leaving Trinidad, the Evening News wrote a story. Musician of the study, stuff like that, and different stuff. Musical journey, and it's a different booklet. I just do. Now this one is a pan book. I've sold hundreds of these. This has everything a person needs to know about pan. After you go through this, you feel like you know about pan, even without the personal experience. So it has everything about pan and even music and stuff. And then I wrote another book that has tunes that you could play for pan. I got help from Frankie Francis writing some of the music. Okay. Yeah. See, so that's my stuff here. But I can't see without help. But the Lord sort of shine a light when He wants me to see the important things. I'm blessed, every time I thank the Lord, and I keep getting calls, Gigging on Thursday, I'm gigging coming up this week. It's what I refer to as a plumbing problem. It's for us to see aqueous fluid flows like a cascade in front, and that's how we see, right? In glaucoma patients, the aqueous fluid will go in but not come out at the same time. So then the lobe begins to get enlarged like a water balloon. And in so doing, crush the vein, the optic nerve. There's no pain, no nothing. Sometimes you're just cleaning your glasses and you get glaucoma and you don't know. It's almost hereditary, but I think as anything else, stress. And it happened about a year or so after my mom passed. And I was kind of close to her.
Okay.
So maybe that stress that I didn't know about. I was teaching, I had a class, I had 5 essays to mark. And I kept putting it off. And one day I asked a colleague if she'd mark it and right over lunch, boom, 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 she gave me the grades. And I decided I have to get glasses, new glasses. When I went there and they did the test, since then 6 surgeries and still laughing.
So, in fact, I want to thank you for giving me the time. Thank you for giving the community, the public at large, all the history. This is a history not just for the football. This is a history we all need to know that people like you and even in your little church here, you're doing so well. So I want to thank you again for being there and giving me the time and all the information.
I feel it's important. I was glad to participate after over 55 years in this town, and 76 years on this planet. I feel so good sharing all that I have. and leaving stuff. I know I leave pan in Toronto, in Canada. I know that.